Welcome to the JAMODI Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders, so let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it.
The JAMODI Podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
That was one of my favorite parts. Being a college player was obviously going, like you said, going through that freshman year is just your eyes are so wide open. Everything is new. You're dealing with sometimes 22-year-old, the seniors like Terry Black and DeMarcus Minor that don't really want to have too much to do with you as a freshman and a sophomore or as a freshman player. But man, you go through it's the beautiful struggle, right? You go through that struggle and then you become a sophomore and it's like, okay, I'm starting to understand and be a part of these rhythms even more. Coach, I think my question to you is, now that the landscape is so different, take this Baylor team this year. They have 0 returning players from the previous year. So you're not having the time with the players to that, like he's struggling now, but man, if he sticks with it in a year or two, he's going to have it. How do coaches do it now? Building that type of relationship, and I'm going to use the C word, culture, that you used to build and that you've been talking about. How do they do it?
Yeah, it really is the biggest challenge, I think. And it's funny when you say culture. When I first started, no one used the word culture. They didn't
No
know
one
what it
used
was.
that word, right?
Coach or brand. I laugh. Coach Katie did brand and culture before anyone else. We had our play hard brand. That was the thing. And he put play hard on the bottom of his shorts, and he had the sign when you walked out of the gym that said play hard, and the locker room. And it was our brand, but no one said it was the brand. It was just part of it, the culture, togetherness, the family, all those things. We were doing those things way back. Now it's the cliche.
That's right.
My wife and I always laugh every morning we hear the word iconic. I don't know how people use that word all the time. Well, I guess that means you're old, iconic, and so. But the culture, iconic, brand, those kind of words are, it's different. But it's hard now, and you got to do your best. I think one of the things, and if we talk about the future of the game, and I'm still in, I'm in the BTN Big Ten Network, in the studio, but I have coaches out there, and I talk to them all the time. And one thing is, and you can't, Coach Drew can't do anything about it. He has no one, but I think one of the biggest things is you got to try to keep a couple guys within the program that understand it, that you're connected with. I think that is so vital if you can, if it's possible. The second thing, I think, when you're recruiting guys now, you got to get guys that played in good programs. It doesn't matter how high a level. You see so many Missouri Valley Conference kids having success at the next level. Well, one, they're older. 2, they've been coached. They've been in good programs. It's competitive. Those kids have had success in the Big Ten that I'm watching, and they played for good coaches. And then, were they coached? Were they demanded of things of them? I think that's important. So it's when you're going in the portal, it's not always how high they can jump or how many dunks. I get this all the time from guys sending me videos of kids. What do you think of the kids? And they show me 7 dunks. Well, they didn't show me dribble, pass, or shoot. And I'd like, how the heck do I know what the kid can do? So you better put time in to, not only the physical part obviously is important, but the were they coached, the mental part. Do they understand the game, the competitive? You talk about Deron Williams, and you can, you don't have much time, but again, who did he play for? Which coaches? Because which coaches coach these guys, and other guys just let them play. It's just part of it. In high school when you go against guys. So, that, and now once you get them, you're going to have to start, It's almost like starting over if you can find a leader. And it's hard to be a leader. I remember somebody telling me, "Oh, I can't be a leader, coach. I just got here." I said, "Yes, you can be a leader. It doesn't matter. When I go to a group, I try to become the leader if possible. If there isn't somebody there, you have to, somebody's got to do that. So that summer workouts are even more important, getting that leadership, the camaraderie, the events. How do you get guys? You talked about the seniors had nothing to do with you or I'm making sure at least once a week, twice a week, we're doing things together. We're going to movies. We're going bowling. We're coming to the house. We're doing a community project, and that's where you start developing the leadership, the camaraderie, the togetherness, which guys you can play together. And then you almost have to fast forward the summer with the practice stuff. You got to start figuring some stuff out about your team and bringing them together and how you're going to put, this unit together. So it's hard. It's a challenge. I feel sorry for guys. But again, if you can keep 2 or 3, especially the main guys, it's going to help you because when we joke about culture, but culture, brand, togetherness,
Standards. Yeah.
It's so important.
I had the honor of getting to talk with Coach Campy after his great run against Kentucky a couple years ago. When they beat them, and I asked him because he's been at his school at Oakland for 40 plus years. I said, "Coach, what's it like to build a program there, and what are some things you got to do?" He's like, "Matt, like it's not about building a program anymore." He says it's about building teams. Like, and it was like we could look at that, and like that to me is a little sad. I like the idea of building a program, doing something that has a higher purpose, and older players teaching younger players and passing on the torch. But it's like you got to adapt or die, right? Like you have to just change with what's happening. So I believe these coaches now are becoming master team builders. And you nailed it, coach. You went right into some of those things that we have to create is experiences that will fast track these relationships that we used to say was more like I don't know, more like a crock pot, right? Like where you're going to put all these ingredients in, and over hours and hours and hours it's going to become a team. Well, now, like you said, we got to be doing things that build these experiences fast.
It used to be a 2-year process. Now it's a 5 months process, and you got it. But again, those ingredients I think are so important to put in. And when I even talk at clinics all the time, a high school coach, you don't have a choice for the most part who that ingredients is, who the players are. But in college, you do have that, and it's so important if you can getting those right guys that fit in. And again, that it's a crapshoot a little bit that recruit kids and think, oh, he's going to be a great kid, and he gets to college, and all of a sudden he's crazy. It's just like, wait a minute, you probably had friends. They got to college, and it's like, wait a minute, their personality changed. So, that's a whole nother dynamic you have to deal with. So, but it is not easy. It's a tough situation. I feel for coaches, but one of the things when we talked about keys to being a good coach, this is one of the things Coach Katie taught me years ago. You have to be flexible. He told me this 50 years ago, if you want to stay in the business, you got to learn to be flexible. When, he was an all defensive coach, and then all of a sudden you get the 3-point shot, we had to adjust. We got Glenn Robinson, we had to adjust. He sent me to Rick Pitino in Boston, and we learned how to press, and we changed our whole thing because we had better players, and I think that's the key to good coaches. They're able to adjust, especially in high school. Whether you have slow guys, you got more athletic teams, and every year is different, but you have to adjust. You can't just keep doing the same thing. If there's the players always, one of the sayings I always said, and the coaches, they always know, if nothing changes, nothing changes. If you keep losing to this team and don't change, nothing's going to change. You have to change and keep up with it and be flexible. And that it's one of the big things, with as a coach to be successful. If you want to stay in a business, you have to be flexible and you have to change and you got to continue to learn. When we talk about teaching and being a teacher of the game, part of that is learning, continuing to learn the game. The game changes, staying up with it. That to me, it's sad. And I know you can watch videos, but I used to love to go to clinics. And
Yeah.
I started going to clinics at 19, 20, and taking notes for a group. It was Metallist Industries. They were one of the first ones that started clinics. And that's when I got to walk with Coach Wooden at 19 years old. He said, young fella, you get up early? And I'd like, not. I said, if you need me to do something, I didn't really get up early, but he said, I walk at 6:00, meet me in the lobby. You can walk with me. And I got a chance to walk with him. And, but now guys don't go to clinic. I go speak at a clinic and there's, 30 people and it's sad. Now, schools aren't paying for it and this and that. I understand my brothers went through that and they can buy tapes and put it in the library and that's fine. I understand. But I think that interaction of being at the clinic or going to a practice, I think one of the greatest things for young coaches, go to practices. If you got a good high school coach, go to his practice. You got college coaches, they don't care. They want you to come. They want you to interact. I always laugh. The best programs, high school programs, they were the ones that would bring their whole staff to our basketball for 2-3 days. And they'd do a retreat. And they would sit with our staff. And they would sit in meetings. And they would watch film with coaches. And they come to practice. And then after they'd want to talk. And they were learning. These guys, that's why they're good. That's why they, it's not. I mean, I made our guys go to NBA practices. Hey, one of the best models right now, when you talk about, is Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
You talk about character, you talk about getting guys that are the right fit, under not the high level, and don't get me wrong, their best player is really good, but the rest of the guys, I'm watching Santa Clara on a clip tape years ago, and I'm like, we weren't playing them, but we were playing the other team, and I'm like, who is this kid? He's really good. He's an NBA player. And then like now when the NBA playoffs are going on, one of my assistants said, Coach, you called it, whatever it was 6 years ago. So, but that's part of it. Again, character's important. It makes a difference. You talk about Baylor. Not only did they have talent, not only were they old when they won the national championship, but they had great kids that got along. And I'm sure Scott has told you that. You've probably witnessed it, and that makes a difference.
So flexible. One of the reasons I love getting to do this, to have a talk with you, is the stories that you get to share, not only about yourself, but about those people that you've worked with. I wouldn't have thought of Coach Katie, and this is just because I have no experience. It's only what I've seen on TV. He has a demeanor that, to me, even watching through the TV, is intimidating. You're like, golly, that dude's tough just watching him. But so I would have thought more, just my guess would be rigid, my way. We're not changing all this. So it's really cool to hear a story like that.
Yes. When I do clinics, I always say, and this is years ago, and he was still coaching then, or people knew him more, the least person you would think would be flexible would be Coach Katie. And yet he was. I mean, it was, and even the relationship part, all the stuff, the interaction with the players, and he would. We always said he didn't understand. He would look at something. He would like come in. I saw Portland run this. Go find this. He didn't understand why it worked, but I'd go find the play, and then it was something we used all year. And now he didn't understand the little details of why it worked. We had to do that as an assistant, but that's what he would do. And he just had a knack of finding things, figuring things out. Just, we were doing family stuff, bonding stuff. Oh, 40 some years ago, and like, but it wasn't on TikTok and it wasn't on, so people didn't know it, but we were doing all that stuff. One of the great, and I don't know, did you ever get to go on an international tour with your team, with Baylor while you were there?
Yes, we went. Well, let me think. Not overseas. I actually went with Tate's Lock. Coach Bliss hooked me up with Tate's Lock and got to go on a Europe trip with him for a
Yes.
week, which is a blast. But we went more south. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the biggest team bonding things is going on an international trip, to take guys for 10 days and go in a tough place where they had no choice. No one else could speak to them, because you're going in didn't understand the language, play tough games. Anytime I took over a program, I asked the athletic director if I could take those teams. When I went to Southern Illinois, we went to Dominican Republic with no money because we were the first team to ever go there. And those guys, our players 27, 28 years ago, will still talk about that trip and how it brought us together. When we went to Illinois with Deron and that group, we went to Estonia and Sweden and Finland, and it was a hard trip, but it brought us together. Yeah. It was part of our team. When I went to Kansas State, we went to Brazil that first summer. Almost every time, and I told Coach Izzo, who I love, he didn't really like going on trips. He always said, I want to take my time, that you only get a couple of weeks off in August or something. I want to use it to be around my family and that. But right before last season, they went to Italy. Well, guess what happened with his group this year? They were one of the best teams in the country, won the Big Ten. I can tell you, we won at Purdue 6 Big Ten championships when I was assistant. And I bet 5 of the 6 we went on international trips with, before that. And again, when you talk about bonding and doing things together, I think any type of thing like that, you can simulate, bring the guys together, do stuff. I think it's important.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.